Hello, and welcome to another Sports NextDoor podcast. My name is Owen. Today is Friday, April 16th, and I am joined, as I always am, by my neighbor Max. How's it going, my friend?
As I was telling you off air just before, a little frazzled, had a very impulsive week and decided to move to Montreal basically on a dime after a call with some friends. So there's been a lot of logistical makings and then oh shit moments going on this week, and changes in the air, which is not something I've said once on this podcast, I think.
Yeah. Well, we had moving day at the Masters last weekend. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's when they start moving the pins around throughout the tournament and making it more difficult on the players. So then we got moving day coming up this weekend for us and not in the sports world. So it's going to be a busy weekend. Yeah, I'm getting the keys to my place in London today and start moving stuff tomorrow. Should be hectic. And yeah, we might have a couple different Zoom backgrounds.
Yeah,
For the next time this pod goes.
I'll have to go all in on like figuring out poster placement and maybe get like a Canadian flag hanging. Moving to Montreal, so gotta bring my Leafs jersey.
Yes, of course. Maybe I gotta start putting my jerseys up. I don't know if my girlfriend will be too happy with that. Yeah.
You're getting a 2-bedroom, eh? So just take over one of the bedrooms. It's my recording room.
Yeah. Maybe. We'll see. I don't know what the layout looks like exactly yet, but have to figure out a podcast area, definitely.
Yeah, looking at places, ones with like desks and such are getting a little bit of a bonus stalker eyes for that.
Yeah. It's a busy weekend for us, and it's been a busy week for us because we had this is probably the most Toronto sports action we've had in a long time. And of course, I love every second of it, especially someone who consumes baseball and soccer more so. And we had 3 Leafs games this week. Plus, we got I think they're probably going to, so no game against Vancouver tomorrow night, but I think they're going to do back-to-back against the Canucks Sunday, Monday, even though that's not what's scheduled right now. I think that's what's going to happen. Then we had 2 Raps games this week, plus we got one coming up tonight and then one on Sunday. Jays, of course, are playing every single day because it's baseball. And then TFC with their CONCACAF Champions League match on Wednesday and kicking off their season tomorrow night. So a big week in Toronto sports, and we are here to break it all down, beginning with hockey. And before we get to the Leafs, we will start with the NHL trade deadline. I'm not going to go through every move because for most of it, it was a lot of smaller fringe moves. I think the big trade that I want to start with that maybe you have some thoughts on, Max, is the Washington Capitals acquiring forward Anthony Mantha from the Red Wings in exchange for Jacob Vrana, Richard Panik, a 2021 first round pick and a 2022 second round pick. A massive move it came in at like 330, but just a massive panic move, it seemed like, by the Capitals after Pittsburgh and Boston had made some big moves earlier on in the weekend.
I see what you did there. Panic move. Yeah, it's a surprising trade in a lot of ways that you really almost never see a playoff contender make. I mean, on one hand, you don't see guys in Mantha's age group and contract position get moved really ever. And on the other hand, the assets they're moving, Vrana, Panik, are the sorts GMs love to have come playoff run that you can't get enough of, like cheap veterans who are going to give you great bang for your buck and depth scoring come playoffs. So it's really interesting to see like just an approach that's cut from a different cloth than what we usually see. And it gives the Capitals one of the best forward cores in the league. Ovechkin, Ovi, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, you add Mantha to that and you're one top 6 forward away from probably the most deep talent-filled top 6 in the league. So going to be interesting, but they're going to be missing some depth. So
yeah. And so it's interesting. The way I saw this trade is First of all, Washington gave up a ton. Like, congratulations to Steve Yzerman for getting an absolute haul compared to everyone else at this deadline, not necessarily getting that first round pick or a couple of picks that they really needed. I think Columbus is the other team that made out really well, getting 2 firsts, one in the Savard deal, one in the Foligno deal. But the Red Wings, of course, I guess what they see is Anthony Mantha is just a little bit too old. They're really looking long-term for this team. I think by the end of his contract, he's going to be 30. And I think that's when they're entering their window. So I guess they just feel like in terms of core pieces, he's not on that same timeline. So they can afford to give him up. They get back Jacob Vrana, who's a couple of years younger. I think he's an RFA at the end of this season. So definitely more negotiation power with how they want. Maybe they can get a little bit of a cheaper contract instead of Mantha's deal. And then, of course, you get the picks, which is what you really want when you're Detroit and you're rebuilding. And then on Washington's side, a lot of people were scratching their heads because Vrana is a great player, great young player they have on their team, which is something that Washington doesn't have a lot of because they've been contending for so many years. And what I've heard and what I see here is what they're getting with the Mantha deal is cap certainty. So with Vrana, you have to re-sign him in the offseason. You don't know how much that's going to be. Could actually be more than Mantha's deal. And also, low-key, Alex Ovechkin is up at the end of the season, and they're going to have to sign him, and it's going to be a lot of money, and it's going to be a contract that is heavily dependent on what the cap looks like around the rest of the team. And so if you have kind of Ovechkin and Vrana, both kind of uncertainty in how much you got to pay them in this uncertain time that we live in, I think they were like, okay, we'll take Mantha. He's really solid. He helps us win now. And now we know what we have to fit Ovechkin into. And so for them, that was the value there. Still felt like they gave up a little bit too much, but good job by Detroit for managing to swing a pretty big haul for a solid core guy that the Caps can use on their run, and definitely matching up with the Jeff Carter move and the Taylor Hall move from their division rivals, and the Zajac Palmieri move that the Islanders made a little bit earlier on. The next move, I guess we can talk about there are a couple other decent sized moves. I think the one that surprised me the most, besides from the Mantha deal, was just Hayden Fleury getting moved from the Carolina Hurricanes in exchange for defenseman Yanni Hakanpää and 6th round pick in the 2022 draft. Felt a little bizarre. Of course, the Ducks had just moved out. I believe it was Gustafsson or Goodbranson. One of them played for the Ducks. And Hayden Fleury, a guy on the contending Carolina Hurricanes. And I'm just not sure why you're moving. It's kind of like if the Leafs moved Dermott for prospects right now. So it just feels weird that they're moving a piece in their defense core. The reasoning I heard behind it is everyone's thinking about this expansion draft coming up this summer. And so that's probably the guy Seattle would have taken. And I guess Carolina is confident enough in their defensive depth that they were willing to give up Fleury and get just a little bit of capital back rather than lose him for nothing this summer. But if you're going for a cup, you just kind of keep your guys, and then hopefully things fall where they may.
Yeah, it shows the confidence isn't too high about that cap run or cup run, because it's worth it if you can win the cup, whatever happens. So, I mean, you look back at Pittsburgh before the Vegas expansion, knowing that like Fleury was probably going to go, but saying like we can't give up on the certainty for this cup run, and that ended up being the right move at the time, if I'm getting my years right.
Yeah, definitely something to follow as we're getting closer to draft season in the NBA and the NFL, but also a really fun, exciting expansion draft coming up. And it took over the world when Vegas did it a couple of years ago. It was all the rage on Chell 21 or whatever the year game was to do that. And now we've got a new one. And it'll be interesting to see what lessons have been learned by GMs, because Vegas just got an absolute treasure trove of assets and managed to pluck these incredible underused stars off of teams. And So it'll be really, really fascinating to see if Seattle has that same sort of success, or if things will be different this time.
Yeah, that was a total flipping of conventional wisdom on what an expansion draft is and produces, and it, I'm going to be really curious to see, just as a like experiment on, is that just a freak occurrence of like excellent management and a bit of luck, or have analytics and like underused guys become such a prominent thing, and chemistry and the skill gaps are way different than we think they actually are, that you can build a contending team essentially from scratch? Certain franchises going to be in scrambles if that is true.
Yeah. Yes. And yeah, I don't have much more to say about that, but we will move on to the Leafs moves at the deadline. Last couple peripheral moves, really squeezing in that cap crunch here at the end. They acquired defenseman Ben Hutton from Anaheim for a 5th-round pick in 2022. And then they get forward Antti Suomela from the San Jose Sharks for Alexander Barabanov. And that move purely for me is they moved Barabanov because he now knows he's not going to get any playing time on this new look Leafs roster. And in order to please the agent, make sure that you have all the other international players knowing that we will help serve your best interests. They move him to a place where he's going to get playing time. Looks good on the Leafs organization to give the guy what he wants for future international signings. And Barabanov hopefully has more opportunity on the Sharks. And hopefully he gets his first NHL goal there. That would be cool. And yeah, they pick up Antti Suomela. I think he's got 4 career NHL goals. He might get a bit of action, especially based off last night with Nylander and Matthews not in the lineup. We saw a little bit of Adam Brooks. So we could see down the line, if there's a couple more injuries, Suomela could get a spot and see what he can do. But a peripheral move. I don't know if you have any more thoughts on either of these deals.
Yeah, I mean, we called for a depth defenseman, and that would make Keefe's or Dubas's work done, having addressed every position. That's what he did. So love to see that. Um, man, I had the TSN, they were hyping up their trade deadline show for like months in advance, and it was fun. It was like, man, it's crazy. They have like all their guys doing a like 9-hour show, a lot of them in studio, a lot of them in the COVID age doing Zoom, but like those guys all have great chemistry and they get to be a little more off the cuff, a little more loose, less like practiced talk, rehearsed talking points, and a little more on the fly. There was a funny moment when Suomela trade got announced, and Jeff O'Neill was just like, yeah, I've got no idea who that is.
Wow. Yeah, the trade deadline is definitely a place where the core hockey fans enjoy it. But if you're not like super up to date on every team, there's going to be a lot of moves where you're just left going, what is this significant? What is the point of this? Yeah, definitely a couple names in there that I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah, and things like the reasoning behind the Vrana for Mantha only come out later. So you've got to like on the spot hear about this and speculate why would they do that, and that wasn't in the forecast, wasn't in the horizon at all. It's like, huh. So you don't get the most correct reactions, but you definitely get some fun ones.
Yeah. So I guess the last thing about the trade deadline, just as a Leafs fan, what would you grade the trade deadline for the Leafs based on all the moves they made and kind of the checklist they had going in?
Man, I mean, they checked all the boxes, but that's never been the issue with this Leafs team. They often make moves that seem like they make sense in the present and they don't work out. So I don't like, I guess you give them a B plus because they did everything they were supposed to within expectations and it seems solid, but you can't say how it worked out until it works out. The Riddick move is the one that I would give the most props to, just in terms of that really makes sense. I addressed my questions about the Foligno trade like with the fact that a deep first round pick is probably worth more this year than it's going to be with any other year, knowing that the scouting is going to be off and it's going to be a bit more of a crapshoot for prospects. So we'll see what Foligno brings to the team. We'll see how this team performs come playoff time.
Yeah.
I don't know. How about you?
I think I would just bump it up to an A minus based on the cap shenaniganery that had to be done, a bit of the cap gymnastics done by Kyle Dubas and his advisor Brendan Pridham, who's gotten a lot of name recently because of he is kind of the ideas guy behind how they're managed to squeak people on LTIR, move things around, call random guys up throughout the year. Like, just some guys who have been called up this season to meet certain cap requirements that never sniff the ice. Just really interesting to see how they move them up and down. So managing to hit that checklist, like get a leadership guy who can jump up and down the lineup, get a depth defenseman, get a depth goalie, get another forward, right? All of those moves without giving up anyone from your actual roster, I guess, besides Barabanov, but he is very expendable. To do all of that and fit it under this cap, which they are so tight up against, like just really, really impressive to me that they were able to do a lot of that and figure how to get things done without really giving up anything, in my opinion. Like all these draft picks mean nothing. If this team even gets to like the third round, draft picks mean nothing. Like throw them out the door. I don't care. Yeah. So yeah, I was impressed, and it's got to be up in the A range for me just because of how they exceeded the expectations and stayed under the cap. So probably around an A minus. All right. A couple more Leafs news before we wrap this section. They officially signed their first round pick from 2020, Rodion Amirov, to an entry level deal. The KHL season just ended, so he is eligible to play in the NHL. He won't be eligible to play in the playoffs now because he has been signed after the trade deadline. But he will get some work probably with the Marlies this season, which will be good. And there is a clause in his contract that he will work with the Marlies and then with the Leafs development staff, and then he will most likely go back to the KHL next season and can be, of course, recalled whenever, but most likely will be another season in the KHL for him. But gets to spend more time with the Leafs staff than I guess you could say for some of the other international players. He has this opportunity now to work with the Marlies, work with the Leafs development staff, get to know the system, and exciting for the kid to possibly be a part of the future. He's only 19. He looks so young in this picture here, and people are really excited to see what he can do. And maybe it's another exciting piece that you can add to the depth, maybe like a Nick Robertson type of the future. So yeah, there's some news there. We've also got Matthews missing last night's game, and he was day-to-day with an injury. Sheldon Keefe said it was not the same injury as the wrist injury, which sets off alarm bells, but also the fact that it's day-to-day maybe gives you a little bit of breath, and the Leafs are in a little bit of a buffer zone where they can afford to rest guys. They get tonight off, they get tomorrow off now with the Canucks being postponed just a couple more days, so they get practice time, and they'll be right back on the horse for the big stretch because they've got 3 more games left against the Winnipeg Jets, which is their closest adversary in the standings. The last thing I would say, just wrapping up last night's game, missing Austin and Willie really has a big impact on this team. But the biggest thing is just the power play continues to be horrid. I think they're 1 for 40, their last 42 now. Just like terrifyingly bad and really inexplicably bad. And you just got to hope and pray that it's one of those things where they're going to start the upswing just around playoff time, and then they'll just have a red hot power play in playoff time because it needs to turn around quickly. They cannot continue to win 5-on-5 and expect to win more games.
Well, it's this vicious cycle where teams know how unconfident and shaky they are on the power play right now. So they're able to play way more aggressive on the penalty kill. Like There was a moment in the 5-on-3 last night where all three Jets were in the corner hunting for the puck. That means you've got like three guys wide open, like on the blue line in the slot, and you've only got a split second to make that pass because the defense is way ramped up. But the defenses are playing so aggressive and pinning us down and out battling us on the boards for pucks. And they're giving up opportunities when they do that. Like, most penalty kills are not going to play that aggressive, especially not against a team like the Leafs that have so many great goal scorers. But when you have that puck and you've got two guys coming for you and you don't have that confidence to make that perfect pass in half a second and set up the guy they're leaving wide open in the slot, or like get it to the blue line where they're making space to start attacking the holes that the aggressiveness is presenting, you just get stuck in the corner and have to reset again and again. And it's a vicious cycle because in order to make that pass, you need the confidence that comes from a successful power play. But yeah, so it feels like they've got to be perfect. I mean, Galchenyuk hitting a post, it does feel a little cursed. Like, just anything that can go wrong is going wrong. They've given up more shorthanded goals on their power play than they've scored in that 42 game stretch, which is just embarrassing. But man, the thing bugging me, or like noodling my mind the most, is where is William Nylander? Like, have you heard that he has COVID?
No, so what I just learned now, or what I've figured out, it seems like, is uh his close contact protocols say he has to take 7 days. So he's coming back today. Today is the day that he's
Okay.
back.
It,
Um,
it's been 9
even though,
days
but
then.
he has come back negative every single day. It's just that protocol dictates that he had to take the week. And so it sucks that he's missed that time. And the Leafs have, I think they were 1-2-1 in that stretch. So for the boomers out there, maybe Willie's a little bit more important than you would like to admit. But he should be back for the next games. I believe today's the day that he can join the team and begin practicing. So I guess what you can take away from it is he got a week of rest, which is probably good this time of year, and hopefully he'll come back super fresh and wheeling and dealing, and might be a big add to the power play that's been struggling.
Yeah, I mean, more goal scorer, you hope. Tavares has been red hot this week, so it'll be really interesting to
Yeah.
see, I guess, what Keefe does, because he looked great playing. That top line looked great.
But
Marner, Galchenyuk. You can't break up Matthews Marner.
yeah.
But
And what I would say is it feels like Marner is the driving force for these guys. Like, you just seem to put either of them with him and they are just instantly elevated. It just shows how incredible this kid is. And like last night they showed the stat. He has the most points through the first 5 seasons of any Leaf ever, which is just ridiculous. I mean, there's not like a ton of all-time scorer names on the Leafs list, but definitely like really, really cool. And he's still got quite a bit of season left to maybe extend that lead on the record. So, yeah, Mitch Marner seems to be driving that line quite a bit, and just happy that Tavares is getting the production because he's been pretty solid all year. Obviously, he can look a little bit quiet when you've got the other guys buzzing around him because he's just not as quick as some of these other kids. But he's been really solid all year, and it's nice that he's getting some of the production now. And Galchenyuk getting a goal last night was really big too for him.
yeah, and that's a huge part of the Foligno trade, right? The confidence that Galchenyuk is going to be able to be a consistent top six scoring forward for us. So that's huge to see that gamble not pay off, but some signs of promise in life.
Absolutely. All right. The last couple things I want to talk about was the Flames kicking off a good start to their absolutely, this is their last chance. All these games coming up against Montreal, and they kick it off. They beat the Leafs, of course, on Tuesday, and then they beat Montreal in regulation, which is the super key bit of these wins that they're going to have to get. Is you cannot let Montreal even get any points out of these games, and a little bit of life now. The lifeline has been restored for the Flames because we cast them off a couple weeks ago. There's still a chance. Obviously, it's not the biggest chance, but there's still a chance, and this is it for them.
Yeah, it's going to take more consistency than they've shown at any point in this season so far to clinch that playoff berth, which you can't count on. I mean, like Monahan, Gaudreau, Lindholm, Chikuk, just Markstrom just haven't been shown that level of consistency throughout this season. But back against the wall, you never know what's going to happen. And it comes with a bit of a slump from the Canadians too. I mean, they picked up that one win against the Leafs, but other than that, they've not been playing well at all. So they play again tonight. It's going to be real tone setting and get real interesting if the Flames can win. What the Flames have the chance to do is essentially put things even, because Montreal still has, I think, 3 games in hand on them. And then it just becomes a race against who can maintain a better record against all the other teams. So hoping for a good storyline there.
Yes, definitely. The last thing I wanted to touch on, apologize to Buffalo Sabres management. They were right. They are the best management in the league. Anders Bjork, of course, is outscoring Taylor Hall by 300%. He has 3 points this week. Taylor Hall has 1 goal for the Boston Bruins, and therefore all Buffalo Sabres slander is negated. They are doing nothing wrong, and great direction of the franchise. That is all.
Keep it up.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a quick break, come back for some Combat Corner. All right, we've got UFC Fight Night coming up this Saturday. It will be your last night in Toronto, getting to watch UFC for quite a while, and then you'll be moving on. But first, let's hear that preview of what you got for us this weekend.
Yeah, a fight 2 years in the making. Kelvin Gastelum versus Robert Whittaker. This fight was supposed to happen for the middleweight title 2 years back in Australia, with Whittaker having to pull out the day of or the day before within like 50 hours of the fight after weigh-ins due to an emergency hospitalization. So you've got to feel so bad for Gastelum how that played out. And then he was 1 round away from getting that title shot. Izzy stole it from him isn't the right word. Beat it from him maybe is. And he had a tough run from there. Started to turn things around with his last matchup against Ian Heinisch, which was huge just for the legacy and considerations of Gastelum, because like I was saying before that fight, he didn't have any wins over top 15 contenders under the age of 35. So going up against like a prime athletic age middleweight and outskilling them was really important for the stock and considerations of Kelvin Gastelum. And now he gets a chance to continue that momentum by going up against Robert Whittaker, who and I think a lot of people consider the #1 contender at the middleweight division. Injuries, I think, is going to be a big part of the segment later when we get more into the NBA stuff, which almost has me a little reassured, gratified, because I was kind of sulking this week. Like, man, MMA is such a frustrating sport for injuries. We had last week's main event getting taken away, with Till having to pull out weeks before. Whittaker's supposed to go up against Costa. Costa had to pull out. This isn't as good of a matchup. It doesn't do as much for Whittaker, but still a fun one. Like I said, Whittaker, I think, is the deserving #1 contender. He should have gotten a shot after that Cannonier win, but he has to go out and get one more win. And it's kind of a chance for him to put on a showcase. I mean, the 1 month notice of this fight means there isn't a full fight camp of game planning and practicing and getting certain motions down to an automated state. But having had that fight camp 2 years before, which they did the Ultimate Fighter, so Gastelum been on Whittaker's radar for a long time and vice versa, which definitely makes it interesting. Whittaker, a really tactical guy, and I do think for the most part he should have this fight in the bag and a chance to just put on a showcase against Gastelum, because he's just that elite a fighter, the number one middleweight contender. One thing that I think doesn't show up like in judges scoring and maybe get considered after the fights is he's managed to inflict 2 injuries on his last 2 opponents that really helped him win the fight against Darren Till in that 5-round like chess match of a kickboxing contest. Whittaker in the 2nd, 3rd round landed one of those stomping keep kicks on Till's knee and really damaged the mobility of Till. I don't think it ended up being like an ACL tear like some people thought, but Till couldn't really move for the latter half of that fight, and that was a huge part in Whittaker taking those later rounds. And then against Cannonier, he like broke the arm or like made an indent fracture with a high kick when Cannonier was trying to block. I mean, those high kicks were money for Whittaker all night. He was constantly throwing them so quickly. He'd throw a 1-2 and then like whip a high kick in there right behind it. And Cannonier had to be sharp on that all night. And eventually one snuck through, wobbled him, and Whittaker almost put him away. But I'll be curious to see if he can continue that streak of not scored but very useful injuries and damage inflicted on opponents. The reason I feel like Whittaker has this in the bag for the most part, though, is kind of the same thing I was saying about the last Gastelum fight, where I think Till just put out this really straightforward, easy to follow, highlighting Gastelum's strengths and weaknesses game plan against him, where at distance, Gastelum didn't have too much. Till did fight as a southpaw. Whittaker's an orthodox, so that's a little different, but he managed to really neutralize the hooks and the in-close striking by clinching up Gastelum. And Whittaker, like I said, just such a tactical guy. I feel like he'll be able to take that game plan. He's so good at range. His reflexes are phenomenal. He keeps his hands so low, but manages to get a read on the striking and stay out of danger. Those high kicks are going to be money against a southpaw fighter, but it's an MMA match. Anything can happen. I thought Gastelum was going to get totally technically outstruck against Izzy, and he managed to turn that into a really nerve-wracking 5-round back and forth match, hurting Izzy twice. So Gastelum definitely has the power in his hands to make it interesting. The clinch work from close could go his way if Whittaker isn't in all the right places and perfect. You saw Heinisch in the last fight against Gastelum try and implement his own grappling, and Gastelum was able to reverse position and get to a more dominant one every time. I mean, Whittaker, like GSP-esque in no formal wrestling background, but just being a great athlete and having a great sport IQ, is a great wrestler. He competed for Australia in the past. So I'm hoping to see a couple grappling exchanges to see the difference between those two there. But yeah, I'm hoping to see a showcase from Whittaker. No one's stopped Gastelum yet. Izzy got very, very close, but didn't. So put a stamp on that contender run to earn a title shot and do something no one's done. Show off the tactics, show the improvement since the Adesanya lost, because he did get into trouble just rushing in there and getting caught. So show you can do that and not get caught against a dangerous striker. And you should have this title shot in the bag. So looking forward to that performance and see what's to come from Whittaker. Also, we'll definitely have to check out the highlights replays of the Askren Paul boxing match, but I've said everything I've got to say on that. So should be a good weekend for combat. We're back. I hope your back is doing great, Owen, because you're going to have to carry the rest of this podcast and perhaps a few more.
All right. I am up for the challenge, and I will start in the baseball segment of this podcast. The Toronto Blue Jays are a team that is 4-2 against the New York Yankees, which you love, but they are 2-5 against everyone else that they've played so far. They lose last night to the Kansas City Royals. Tried to make their way back. Tough loss. You take it and you just keep moving on. That's how baseball goes. The season is just endless. Kind of couple takeaways from the Yankees series. Hyun-Jin Ryu with another quality start. This guy is just an ace, period. He's made 9 quality starts in his 15 total starts for the Blue Jays over his tenure so far, which is really, really great. It's just such a nice piece of like relaxation for the managers, knowing you don't have to expend the bullpen on that day. Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. have been the 2 hottest hitters on the team. Really loved the approach I've been seeing from them. Bo Bichette with the massive game, 3 hits in the walk-off homer to win the Yankees series on Wednesday, and that is huge. You just love the salty Yankees tears. They are last in the AL East right now, which you just love to see. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr., great offensively. The thing I'd say defensively that really freaks me out is when he's playing first base, no matter what play it is, he is always stretching way too far to make the play at first base. Like it seems like he does the splits every time there's a play to first, which I appreciate the effort that he's trying to give his guys the best chance to get the out. He's stretching out. He's attacking the baseball at first base, but he's going to hurt himself. Like I swear every time there's a double play or anything, he's like falling off the base after he makes the catch, like stretching out. So I'm just worried about the injury risk there, but so far so good. He's been staying solid. The reason why I worry about injuries is I'm going to quickly read you off the Toronto Blue Jays current DL, or I guess IL, it's called now, the injured list. Kevin Biggio last night took a line drive off of his hand in the game against Kansas City. The x-rays have come back negative, which is great. So probably just a bruise. He might be out for a day or two. Also on the injured list, Jordan Romano, Ross Stripling, Julian Merriweather, David Phelps, Tyler Chatwood, Thomas Hatch, George Springer, Teoscar Hernandez, Nate Pearson, and of course, Kirby Yates, who we lost for the season at the beginning. But the Jays, like that is key bullpen pitchers, your best offense or your best like fielder in George Springer, last year's Silver Slugger winner in Teoscar Hernandez, your current closer Julian Merriweather, and then of course now your everyday third baseman Kevin Biggio might miss a little bit of time, just decimated by injuries this early to start the season. And the fact that this team is 6-7 with all of those key injuries is just something you got to take a deep breath and say, okay, let's get a little bit healthier. And of course, there's always going to be injuries throughout the season, and every team's going to deal with it. The Jays are probably going to get a couple more, and as they bring guys back, but it's just like, especially who's been injured, some of these really, like, especially George Springer, that's so key. I think the ceiling on this team is a lot higher. And so you got to feel fairly satisfied at 6-7 right now, because you've seen some good stuff from guys, of course, like Ryu, Steven Matz, and Julian Merriweather before he was injured. But then Bo and Vladdy have been the really big bright spots so far on this season. I think there's a lot of room to improve here for the Jays. So hopefully they can do that moving forward. I think once people start getting healthy, Tanner Roark needs to be gone from this team because he's making a ton of money, and so far he's been really brutal. But we'll see what happens moving forward. The other thing that I just wanted to talk about this week, another no-hitter thrown. That's 2 already in the young season. White Sox pitcher Carlos Rodon throws a no-no against Cleveland. And I feel like we might see a couple more no-hitters as the era of the strikeout continues to increase. It's a lot of all or nothing baseball right now with hitters, a lot of home run guys and a lot of strikeout guys. And we've seen recently news that the MLB is going to be experimenting moving the mound back a couple of feet in the Atlantic Minor Baseball League, just to see if you move that mound back, it gives hitters just that extra split second, which means so much in baseball. Could increase the offense and could balance things out. So it's not just a ton of guys throwing 100, getting a ton of strikeouts like we're seeing right now. And the last piece of information, just get excited, baseball fans. If you are hardcore seam head, then you are going to be looking forward for our very first matchup series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the San Diego Padres, taking place starting tonight and going through the weekend. These are the two best teams, I think, in all of baseball, and they're in the same division. And so we will get to see them play many, many times this season. And this is just the first round of what expects to be an awesome series of games between these two. Of course, Fernando Tatis Jr. is injured right now with the shoulder injury. So that's a big piece missing for San Diego. But they've still been, I think they're 9-5 right now in the season. So still off to a good start. And this will be an interesting matchup. And if you're a baseball fan, this is the game you got to tune into tonight and through the weekend. That's it for baseball. We'll take a quick break and come back for some basketball.
And we're back. Basketball storylines. Let's get at it.
Yeah, the story of this week kind of dominated by two kind of brutal, I guess, injuries. You would call them health concerns is another way of putting it. I'm going to start with the announcement of retirement by LaMarcus Aldridge, and shocking the NBA, I guess, universe. No one was really expecting it, but news coming out that he was experiencing a heartbeat irregularity during the game. He could feel it while he was playing, and knew that this is a very dangerous thing that you cannot take a risk with. And so really, really sad, and really hoping that he's going to be all right. And he had to retire from the Nets and kind of cap off what was a really, really fantastic career. 7-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. People forget that this guy, like the early 2010s, like he made the 2010s All-NBA teams when they made them. I think he was on the third team, but especially those early 2010s, this guy was a bucket, just automatic from that left block. I think he's around 18,000 points for his career, like really, really successful, just missing that championship, which he was really hoping he could make a run towards this season, and just really, really upsetting that this is the way it's got to end for him. Very similar to like Chris Bosh, just some health concerns you just can't control. And he's definitely making the right decision for his family. And congratulations, LA, on a fantastic career. It's been really fun to watch. He's a guy, I think, who was just a little bit, he's just too late to the party. I think if he had been drafted 10 years earlier, he would have been one of the top guys, but his game drafted into a time at the beginning, he was perfect. And now as the NBA game has moved towards pace and space, threes, perimeter centric offenses, he became a dying breed. And that's kind of why Brooklyn was so interested in him, is he provided a different look. No one's able to stop low post moves anymore because no one has them, or no one uses them because it's inefficient. And so a guy who maybe a little bit outside the times, but especially those early 2010s, really productive. So congrats, LA, on a great career. And hopefully he can get that figured out and have a long, healthy life and still be a part of the NBA in some other way, if that's what he desires. Another really upsetting injury this week, Jamal Murray, of course, our beloved Canadian kid, tearing his ACL against the Golden State Warriors. He's, of course, done for the season, done for the playoffs. Probably won't be back until a little bit into the season. Also means he's done for the Olympic run, possibly with Canada, which is like devastating for us here, who are really hoping to see a full strength Canadian squad show what they could do. So hoping that he has a speedy recovery. An ACL is not as devastating as it used to be. It's something that can be rehabbed really, really well nowadays. So hopefully he comes back stronger and committed, because this Denver Nuggets team made the big move to get Aaron Gordon. They were a team that was looking to really make noise in the playoffs. And now you really wonder if they have that ceiling anymore when they're missing a guy who could put up 50 in a playoff game. So really tough injury, and that's just a tough blow for the Denver Nuggets. And you could see them. They had a great win against Miami the other night, but you could see them sliding a little bit in those standings. So it'll be interesting to follow what happens now after losing Jamal. All right, let's talk about some brighter stuff, shall we? Lugens Dort, another Canadian, the Dorcher Chamber, puts up 42 points on Tuesday. I think he had 22 in the first half, or in the first quarter, and everyone was going, "Oh my God, Dorcher Chamber for 88." And love the guy. He of course is at like a defensive stalwart, and showing that he's got a little bit of offensive game as Oklahoma City continues to run out lineups of people that casual NBA fans have never heard of, and continue to be productive. We get to see them in action against our Toronto Raptors coming up on Sunday. So should be interesting to see that there. And speaking of those Raptors, they keep pulling me back in, Max. They keep pulling me back in. Malachi Flynn has continued to develop. He's been fantastic defensively, really active hands. I've already said a lot of this. Kem Birch, such a breath of fresh air compared to what we've been getting from Boucher and Baines defensively, and even a little bit offensively. Like, he had a couple of blocks the other day, just looks so much more athletic and can stay with guys in the paint. And he doesn't just shoot threes that like Aaron Baines' threes, when they miss, hurt even more than normal people, because I don't know, the brick resonates through your body when he puts it up, because he does this like crazy push shot, and it just clonk, and you feel it, like it physically hurts. But Kem Birch doesn't shoot those threes. He's starting to develop a little bit of chemistry with the point guards. Of course, it's been tough with Raptors management trying to tank, sitting Kyle, sitting Fred, sitting OG, sitting Pascal, and they've still managed to steal a couple games this last couple weeks. So it's been nice to see some of those bench guys really hustle, and a huge win against the San Antonio Spurs. They are now only one game behind the Chicago Bulls. And with Zach LaVine entering COVID protocols, so he'll be missing at least 10 days, huge opportunity for the Raptors to maybe squeak by the Bulls into that play-in tournament, which is long-term outlook, maybe not what you want as a franchise, but keeps the playoff streak alive, right? And gives fans something to cheer for, because you got to think that if this team gets healthy, they're definitely better than all those teams in the play-in tournament, you would think. So just really interesting to see what, like, when this team is fully healthy and now you've got an actual productive center in Kem Birch, maybe they could actually do something in the play-in tournament and get into that official playoffs, and then see if you could make a little bit of noise.
I mean, who are the teams they lost to this past week? The Hawks, the Knicks. So
those are the teams, right, in the play-in, who will probably be around that 7 seed. I think the Hawks game especially was just poor effort. Like, Gary Trent and OG were kind of taking over and trying to get their own shots, which was really weird to see because they're normally not like that. But yeah, and Gary Trent was another guy who missed the game against San Antonio, and the Raptors somehow still managed to pull it out. Like, just Flynn, Birch, and then they got some great bench play from Yuta Watanabe, Paul Watson Jr., Freddie Gillespie, this 10-day guy. Very similar. You can't have him and Birch on at the same time, but if you run kind of Birch, Pascal, Gillespie, Boucher, any combination of kind of those two switch back and forth, like Birch and Gillespie provide you very similar gameplay. And Gillespie goes up, blocks DeMar at the rim, but then he gets dunked on by Eubanks later on. Still, he's willing to challenge, and he's a big dude, so he sets good screens and has given them a ton of energy on the offensive glass as well, which I've really liked. So really interesting to see that now you're getting production out of this bench. And maybe if they get healthy, they could do something. They keep pulling me back in. I don't want to be pulled in. Every time they lose, it's like, all right, tank for a top 5 pick. And every time they win, it's like, oh, they're right there. They're right there. So it's not the best spot to be in, but yeah, they're wavering, vacillating back and forth between being a lottery team and being a team that maybe, hey, you could do something in the play-in tournament. So yeah, that's the story of being a Raptors fan right now. Let's move over to the Western Conference where we get to talk about two absolute studs. Luka Doncic, did you see this highlight? The floater three-pointer, game winner, buzzer beater. Just ridiculous stuff from him. Continues to be an absolute magician. He had some comments this week about not actually being a fan of the play-in tournament because he's been, of course, working his butt off all season, and he's rewarded with having to play extra games to just get into the playoffs. My response to that is everyone agreed to it at the beginning of the season, and if you don't like it, win more games. Or if you are in that play-in tournament, you only have to win one. The two teams that trying to steal your spot right now as the 7th seed have to win 2. So just win. That's all I got to say to Luka. And he's a guy that, like, of course, he's going to suck it up and play. Yeah, so looking forward to see what he can do down the stretch. And maybe with, of course, the unfortunate injury of Jamal Murray and the Lakers still being unsure of when their two big guys are coming back, maybe Dallas can jump up the standings a little bit, also chasing Portland there as well, and maybe jump into that 6th seed so they don't have to play in the play-in tournament.
It's also
the last team I want.
Well, I was going to say it's an unfortunate season to test the play-in tournament when you already have that condensed schedule. So those concerns have already been amplified, and that's what it's coming off the back of. I think Mark Cuban, the Mavericks owner, said something similar within the past week.
Yeah,
that's all.
The other major storyline with the schedule is the frequency of injuries is now really starting to gear up because you've had teams that have missed time due to COVID, and now they're playing a ton of games and a ton of nights. I know the Grizzlies, the Spurs, I can't even name some of the other teams, but just those two stuck out to me. They're playing like 6 games in 9 nights, 7 games in 12 nights, like really, really condensed schedules. And that puts a huge toll on your body. And that's why, like, James Harden, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, all these guys with injuries, teams are being extra cautious in bringing them back. And so as long as you can stay out of that play-in tournament, they're going to be really hesitant to bring back their big guys until they are healthy. And the condensed schedule is a big part to play in that. All right, let's get to the last team I want to talk about, the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry has been an absolute inferno, like arsonist, surface of Jupiter or the sun, just like whatever the hottest thing you can imagine. That is what he is right now. He is averaging 39 points per game in the month of April. And that is over 8 games. He's averaging 39 points. He had another 33 last night against Cleveland in their win. They now jump into a tie with San Antonio in their spot. I think that's the 9 spot in the Western Conference, with the Pelicans just a game and a half behind both of them. So it's going to be really tight down the stretch, those 3. But right now, Golden State's in a good groove. Kind of weird that it times up with the injury to James Wiseman and him no longer playing minutes. It feels like they've been trying to force him in to their system, and he's more of a pick and roll type guy. And so now, without having to worry about forcing Wiseman into that system, the Warriors can really go back to that movement style of play that they use. They use the least amount of pick and roll, and Steph's been thriving. Draymond's been thriving. And like Kevon Looney has been the guy that, I mean, he's maybe a below average center by all means, but he fits better with the style they've been in because he's been on the team for quite a few years. And so they've experienced a little bit more success against, of course, a weaker point of the schedule, but you need to win these games if you're going to jump into that play-in tournament. The last guy I want to talk about is Juan Toscano-Anderson, who emerged last year when it was basically a G League team for the Warriors, a guy who came and of course, and played with a ton of energy, ton of grit, kind of just a fun guy to cheer for. And last night he had 17 points on 7 of 7 field goals, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block in 24 minutes off the bench. He's now 24 for 55 from 3 this season, which is almost 50%. It's crazy. And just happy for him that he's been able. It's one of those stories where you just work your butt off and you get a spot on the team, and he's found a role on this team. He'll solidify along. He's kind of one of those glue guys that you want to have when you're looking to make a championship run, right? And that is what the Warriors need if they're going to get Clay back, and if they're going to maybe have another top pick. If the Minnesota Timberwolves pick doesn't finish in the top 3, that maybe they'll trade for another superstar. We'll see. But yeah, the Warriors looking for a guy like this, and happy for Juan. He's been excellent and provided them a ton of energy, and just one of those guys that maybe gets underappreciated in the mainstream view of the NBA, but I wanted to shout him out here. So shout out to Juan. He's been doing great. All right. That's going to wrap up all the time we have for basketball. We'll take one final break, talk a little bit of footy, and then we'll wrap things up. All right.
I'm not going to butcher a British accent, but go ahead, talk some footy.
All right. First, we will start with the Champions League quarterfinals, leg 2 action, always really exciting. And I will kick off with the PSG Bayern game, which I watched the second half of. And somehow PSG did not score in that game. They had a couple of posts, a couple of crazy chances. Mbappe, really surprising that he doesn't get on the score sheet because he is just an absolute wizard, and Neymar as well, and Di Maria, they all had chances in this game. Neymar should have had a hat trick, but PSG doesn't score, but they still hang on, only giving up 1 goal to Bayern and winning on aggregate overall. So PSG is through. Porto scores really late in their match against Chelsea, but again, they lose on aggregate 2-1. So Chelsea is through. The game that I was most intensely tuned into, of course, with my housemate being a Dortmund fan. I don't know how many times I'm going to mention it, but probably not so much anymore with my moving starting today, and also Dortmund being knocked out by Manchester City in this quarterfinal. Another controversial moment that screws over Dortmund again. Of course, you had the Jude Bellingham goal that was called back for a ghost foul. And then, of course, in this game, a cross goes into the box, and Emre Can heads the ball and has his arm out to the side, and the ball goes off his head, then off of his arm, is called a handball. Then on VAR review is confirmed as a handball. And now I'm still not super familiar with the handball rule anymore and how it stands, but based on the reactions that I was seeing from commentators, from people online, is that is not considered a handball if it went off his head first. And so it looks like Dortmund gets screwed again, penalty awarded, gets put home, and then it was it was tight, right? It was 1-1 in that game. Dortmund had scored early on a Jude Bellingham goal. He was fantastic in both of these legs. Really, really well played from him because he's just so young. I think he's 18. And Dortmund kind of pushing, struggling to generate a lot of offense. And then Phil Foden comes through again. He did in the first leg, scoring in the 90th minute. Comes through again with an absolute rocket of a shot off of the corner. And Man City clutches victory with that one. Dortmund needed 1 more goal to take the lead back. And then Man City with that one meant Dortmund had to score 2 or 3 more in the last 10 minutes and really put it away. So you feel bad for Dortmund fans because 2 of those controversial moments could have really swung the tide in this matchup. But they get kind of screwed, and Man City is through. And then Real Madrid and Liverpool, after 3-1 was result for Real, they play to a draw in this one. Mo Salah really like a no-show in this game, and Liverpool just couldn't really create any offense. They had a really solid defensive match, and something I guess to build on going forward for them is this was one of the better matches they played in a while. They just couldn't generate any offense, and so Real Madrid is through, and it's a really uninteresting Final Four in the Champions League. Kind of the 4 big money teams from different leagues. The Oil Clasico is set between Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester City, the 2 oil giants how they make all their money. And then, of course, you got Chelsea and Real Madrid, which are the class of the English and the Spanish leagues. So 4 favorites, I guess you would say. But it's going to be really high level football, which is what I'm excited for moving forward into the semis of the Champions League. Moving on to the, I guess, the Dollarama store version of Champions League CONCACAF here in North America. Toronto FC starts their brand new season with the brand new manager, with a team missing Josie Altidore and Alejandro Pozuelo, probably their 2 top players, like a lot of young guns. And they come back to Toronto after having drawn in the first leg, and they beat the last year's Mexican League champions, Club Leon, and a huge, huge victory for them. 2-1 result. Mullins and Moro with the goals. That second one was really, really big, and you could see them playing really hard for the new manager. They hang on for dear life. Club Leon scores late, and they were pressing the last 10 minutes. There was chippiness, guys getting frustrated on fouls, kicking the ball away. You had a injury to a TFC player, and rather than throwing the ball back to TFC, Club Leon just decided to maintain possession, which is not something you see. And if, like, the people on TFC's bench were freaking out when it happened. Really, really upsetting moment. But they managed to hang on. Bono with a huge save in the 90th minute, and a huge upset and a big win for not just TFC, but MLS as a whole, because an MLS team has not won this new iteration of the CONCACAF Champions League. Of course, TFC came close a couple of years ago, making it to the final, losing to Club America. But maybe this will be the year that an MLS team finally gets the Champions League trophy, and TFC is in the mix as they move on to the quarterfinals. Finally, after that great result on Champions League, the TFC will kick off their MLS season starting tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Toronto sports in full swing, and we will be here to bring it all for you coming up on the next podcast. Thanks everyone so much for listening. Take some time, check out YouTube. Max's Khabib video is absolutely killing it for us. So definitely, if you have any takes there, put them in the comments there, and continue to listen, share it with your friends. We really appreciate the support, and we will continue to pump out pods despite the chaos in our personal lives as we move from location to location. Max, especially with the big move to Montreal coming up. I'll leave it to you, my friend.
Respect your goats. Sports Next Door signing out.